Hey guys, how's it going? I know you've all seen those pictures of hot rod go-karts on the internet, and I know you've all secretly wanted one before. But most of you forget after 20 or so minutes and go back to living life. But not me. I'm gonna build one, because I'm a lot dumber. Alright, without further ado, let's hop straight into the build, for which the first thing I did was I bought this £100 lawnmower. It's got a 5-speed transmission, which was the main thing that I wanted on it, and these nice old beefy tyres. It's got a 12 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine on it. There you go, 12 horsepower flathead Briggs, you know, just your standard lawnmower stuff. And someone's gone and welded a motorbike exhaust on the side of it. Look at that. So they've done some pretty dodgy bending, but you know what? It's not too bad. It does run. I was messing around with it the other day. Unfortunately, I think I broke a piston ring somehow, because now it's smoking really badly. But that's not what we want this for anyway. So the plan is we're going to take the transmission out of this, use these big old pieces of box section to create a frame, and they use our big old Kohler 15 horsepower engine, which I converted to run horizontally instead of vertically. I did that by rerouting the oil pickup line to the oil pump from the bottom of the sump to the outside of the oil pump. Don't know if it's going to work, it might seize up, but you know what, we're going to try it and see what happens. I think we should better get to stripping this down and see what we're working with, because we need to make sure that 5-speed transmission's up to scratch, otherwise might have some issues. Okay, so now let's take one final look at the lawnmower before we decide to pull out our transaxle. Right, so that was a battle and a half, which really hurt my back because I was sat on the floor the whole time. The 6 or so bolts holding this transaxle in were stuck as can be. We're going to see if we can try and drop this out entirely now. Well, we've got a belt still attached up there. And I reckon a couple linkages. Yeah, there's one there, and then the shifter linkage as well. So that one needs to come undone, and then we'll have a transaxle. How cool is that? Oh my days, that took a long time. And like 5 busted knuckles as I kept smacking my hand against the frame. Anyway, so this little spring fell out. Not quite sure where he went, but it doesn't really matter. The point is we've got the transaxle out, which is great. One thing I will say is we look like we have some play here, but obviously that's a concern, because if this transaxle has too much play here, then we can't really use it on this project. But I've got a feeling, if you look at it really closely, I'm pretty sure the play is just here. Alright, so we finally got to the stage where we're going to crack this guy open. I've taken off all the bolts and this little brake mechanism here as well, which is pretty neat. There we go. That's just released. Alright, well, first impressions are no bearings, so that's not so great. We are running bushings. And actually, I don't even think there's a gasket on this at all. No, there's no gasket. Interesting. So, this transmission, I reckon, is up to scratch. Because if you look at these gears, these things are huge. I mean, like, look at the size of that. That's like about the size of the palm of my hand. So I've been staring at this, trying to work out which gear's which, just out of fun. You know, this will be our first, second, third, fourth, and fifth gear here. And then this will be reversed. The chain drive will be reversed. And this is our gear selector. So I think this is just really cool. I'm going to need to do some research into converting this thing to be oil driven. Or not oil driven, oil lubricated rather. Just because my concern is that grease at high RPMs will get flung off and won't kind of go back on the gears. So if I change it out to be oil driven, or oil lubricated rather, like a car is, then once the oil has been flung off, obviously it's a liquid, it can go back onto the gears and continue to lubricate. Anyway, that's a problem for a later date, because we're going to put this back together, and then I think we can try and figure out where parts are going to go on the actual project. Alright guys, so now we're going to be pulling off the front axle on the lawnmower. So I'm hoping to do that so that I can get the rest of the chassis out of here, and I can start laying down the frame rails for the new hot rod we're going to be building. Look at that, that would have been a serious angle if you were drifting. That's got some serious angle apart from, well, you know, it's more of a suggestion wheel than a steering wheel. But you know what, maybe one day this will be a drift mower. But I just realised this engine's leaking fuel. That's why I can smell fuel so strongly in here as well. Okay, so actually we're dumping fuel everywhere, so this is not as good. It's peed on the floor. Look at that. This thing's so nervous about what's going to happen to it, it's wet itself. Alright, for a good period of time I was worried that I was going to feel really bad cutting this up. But I don't think I feel so bad anymore. Oh my god, someone has completely broken this frame. Like, how in the world do you even snap a lawnmower frame? This thing did a grand total of 5 miles an hour. Did I jump it down a cliff or something like that? Because what? That's kind of hilarious, to be honest with you. But god damn. That is mental. Wow, okay. Let's continue pulling this off then, I guess. So you guys have caught me in a bit of an awkward position here. So can you tell me, why is my exhaust puking fuel? And why are we still continuing to drip it out of our carburetor? Oh man, the float must have stuck and filled up this cylinder. Oh no, I should have checked this about a week ago when I parked this thing up. That would explain why the original oil smelled like fuel so much. Oh well, no big deal. Get this off, drain the cylinder, put it away for storage. There we go, another little victory. Got that off, and so I reckon now we're mostly done with this until eventually we come back for the wiring that's left for that engine over there, because we'll just transfer that to there, because I mean, so if I just need to tidy up now, then I can start laying out my parts and being like, okay, this is actually going to be like a go-kart. I might steal that body off it, you know, it's kind of growing on me. I kind of like it. Kind of like the fenders, you know. I think we might, if we chop it in the middle, that would be like, you know, you have one fender here, you have the wheels as well, and then you sit like right in between there, like you cut that out and you sit in between the fenders. That might be pretty cool. But for now, this is going to be the last you guys are going to see of that. I'm going to be continuously robbing parts off this, for example our little idler pulley as well, because we'll need our clutch mechanism. But for the next episodes, as soon as we get the chassis done and built, yeah, you guys will be seeing this more often. Anyway, bye-bye lawnmower. Okay, so this is my crazy old idea. So we've got the steering rack at the front. This is just one I had laying around. We had the 2 wheels off the go-kart before I changed it out to have racing wheels on the front. And then we have the 2 big old beefy wheels at the back. So hopefully we're going to be able to get some kind of drive system going between the box and the engine, maybe even using the universal joint. That would be pretty awesome. So we're going to have the swing arm going all the way back to here, and then we'll have a 1-inch axle, which I need to find a way of converting these wheels to take a 1-inch axle, because right now they're 5/8. But for now, I'm going to get my pieces of chalk and I'm going to start sketching out where I want our swing arms to go, where I want our seat to go. I don't know, I think it's quite cool. Yeah, it's neat, I think. Alright, so I spent most of last night struggling to get these things at 90 degrees, which is kind of weird given that it's literally just a 90 degree here, here, and then obviously you need to be 90 degree in relation to the bottom surface. So I was like, well, something's not right here. So I was looking at my machinist edge. The edge here is in contact, and this edge here is in contact, but this part here is bowed inwards like that. That's an exaggeration, but it's a bit like that. So I got my 90 degrees. Oh, right. So actually you can see that my box section isn't exactly 90 degrees. So obviously this one is under 90 degrees, this one's over, and this one's over. Oh, there you go. And that's the same with both bars. In fact, all of the bars of steel that I have, because they all come from the same manufacturer. But it's no big deal for them, because this kind of steel would be used in construction work, not something as small and I guess precise as a go-kart. So I think that's why we were having issues last night. So I'm going to do the best I can with this Machinist 90 that I have down here to get them 90 degrees in relation to the surface, and then get them 45 centimeters apart, parallel all the way up and down. But other than that, there's not much we can do, and we're just going to have to compensate for it in the design of the go-kart. Alright, so we're just about done welding up the frame. Well, tacking up the frame at this point in time. So I put a 1-inch by 1-inch piece of steel at the end so that we can build our little box off the top so that we can have our A-arms coming off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this whole chassis and I'm going to put it onto a table. and I think we're going to play around with the positionings of the transaxle and then the engine. So I learned from that project that it's way better to start with the engine and transmission before anything else, because otherwise stuff can get complicated, you put stuff in the wrong place, and then you have to work around it, and it's just a big mess. Alright, so like I said I've got the go-kart and everything, or if you can call it a go-kart, I've got the frame, the engine and the transmission all up on the table. So the biggest challenge I have right now is how I'm going to design a clutch. So I have 3 different ideas, 2 of which involve a belt and 1 of them is something else. So my first idea is to have the kind of clutch and transmission combination that a ride-on lawnmower has. So you have the driven over here, you have the drive pulley over here, and then you have a belt running in between, and then when you want to engage the clutch, you just kind of engage the belt by tensioning it, and then that transfers drive from the pulley all the way to the driven pulley. So that's one idea. Second idea is a similar kind of process. So we get the drive off a torque converter, we mount a thrust bearing, which means that when you have the belt in between, you then put pressure on the thrust bearing to decrease the space we have here, which then basically kind of does that and then tensions the belt. So you have the kind of torque converter drive and then a normal standard pulley driven. Now, here's the final idea, and the final idea is to use an automotive clutch. So I have this clutch over here from my MG Midget, which we could potentially use. This would be the most challenging idea, but probably the strongest. So this kind of looks like a clutch plate, right? So I was thinking, well, maybe we could do something along those lines, but I'm not so sure about that idea yet. So that's quite underdeveloped at this point. Okay, so make that 4 ideas actually. Here's the last one. I have this pit bike engine, which I was given, and I've noticed that, wait, this has a manual clutch in it as well, even though it's a semi-auto. It has a manual clutch, right? So what they do is effectively, they use this little guy on top with this bearing, and they use this by rotating this against these gears down here, or these bearings down here even. It puts pressure onto the clutch basket, which when you push it down, really strong, you can't see it, but it's moving. It engages the drive between the crankshaft and the gearbox, right? So as you can see now, there's no pressure on it, and I'm able to rotate the gearbox with our little gear underneath here freely without the crankshaft rotating, right? So what if I can take this, mount it in its own separate little box, and kind of put it down here, have a chain drive running from here to here, and then from here to the transmission. I think that would be a really neat idea. Now, question is, will a 50cc clutch, well, a clutch off of a 50cc pit bike engine, be man enough for the job to take the 400cc's of this engine and the 15 horsepower and the who knows how much torque that this makes, and transfer power from here to the transmission, then to the wheels? So I don't really know yet. I think I like this idea, but maybe a Harley Davidson clutch. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Yep, I have now truly come to the point where I need to be ordering parts. So I need bearings here, bushings to go on top of this. This is a 3/4 inch axle. I know I said 5/8 earlier, it's 3/4 inch. And I need some sprockets. And then because until I've mounted the transaxle, I can't mount the engine. And until I've mounted the transaxle, I can't do the swing arms. Until I've done the swing arms, I can't do the axle. Until I've done the axle, I can't do the front end. And blah, 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 and it goes on. So, transaxle's priority. Figured out what we're going to do about the clutch. So I'm going to go ahead and get some parts in order. And see you guys in the second part of this series. See ya.
Now for the most entertaining edit of some pieces of metal that you've ever seen.